talking about. Welcome to Zebra Studio, by the way. Guess what? Corruption. I know you don't want to hear it. I know you're tired of hearing it. But guys, we can do something. I believe we can do something. Right. I've been looking at some things and doing a bit of reading about corruption. And there's a man that I came across. Very interesting man. He said he used to work in Kenya. He worked in Kenya. I think he worked for the World Bank. And what he says is that on TED Talk, by the way, he says some of the world's most baffling social problems can be traced to systematic, perversive government corruption. And he goes on to talk about how he actually started an NGO to try and tackle corruption and how he was actually stopped. The most interesting thing that he says is that when he started to tackle that, the World Bank was like, you don't do that, because all the African countries this is what they do, they bribe. It's their culture. You cannot do business with them unless you bribe. So all along, our leaders have been doing this to us. And I'm not saying I'm a victim, but all I'm trying to do on this show is to make you guys aware, not only aware, but to talk about these things, to talk about corruption, to spell it out, to call it as stealing, not to be afraid. Especially those who, I understand that the people cannot talk because obviously whatsoever, perhaps the king is just around the corner and he's got a gun and he's going to kill you and take your job whatsoever. But if you can talk, you might as well talk, because this is the attitude that most people have. This is the attitude most Africans have. They say, if you are poor, you're stupid. That's the attitude. That's what they think. And if you're corrupt, you're stupid. And if you have a nice position, you have a nice job, a very good position, perhaps you're a minister of finance or minister of agriculture, whatever it is, and you don't make proper use of that. You just don't make the most of it. Perhaps, in other words, if you don't steal, if you don't take bribes, if you don't use that opportunity as much as you can to grab what you can and put everything in the can and store everything for yourselves and give those you want to give positions to. So that's the attitude that Africans have. And that's really, really sad. So if you're a parent and you have kids, this is how your kids are going to live. They will watch the rich live a very lavish life, take 50 wives, have 20 kids who will go about, the 20 kids will have another 20. And you tell me, okay, if a person has 20 kids, they have 20 kids. You tell me, they keep expanding, they keep growing. They all depend on your money. They all depend on the economy of the country. Yet they don't work. They get all the tenders, they get all the contracts, they start all the charities and start bringing in money. Guys, corruption, stealing is very, very bad. It is basically, it's an epidemic. It is crazy.
And the fight against corruption and the impact of corruption is probably one of the most interesting ways to illustrate what I mean with this failure of governance. Let me talk about my own experience. I used to work as the director of the World Bank office in Nairobi for East Africa. At that time, I noticed that corruption, that grand corruption, that systematic corruption was undermining everything we were trying to do. And therefore, I began to not only try to protect the work of the World Bank, our own projects, our own programs against corruption, but in general, I thought we need a system to protect the people in this part of the world from the ravages of corruption. And as soon as I started this work, I received a memorandum from the World Bank, from the legal department first, in which they said, you are not allowed to do this. You are meddling in the internal affairs of our partner countries. This is forbidden by the Charter of the World Bank. So I want you to stop doing this. In the meantime, I was chairing donor meetings, for instance, in which the various donors, and many of them like to be in Nairobi. It is true, it is one of the unsafest cities of the world, but they like to be there because the other cities are even less comfortable. And in these donor meetings, I noticed that many of the worst projects which were put forward by our clients, by the governments, by promoters, many often representing the suppliers from the north, that the worst projects were realized first. Let me give you an example. A huge power project, $300 million, to be built smack into one of the most vulnerable and one of the most beautiful areas of Western Kenya. And we all noticed immediately that this project had no economic benefits. It had no clients, nobody would buy the electricity there, nobody was interested in irrigation projects. To the contrary, we knew that this project would destroy the environment, it would destroy riparian forests, which were the basis for the survival of nomadic groups, the Samburu and the Turkana in this area. So everybody knew this is not a useless project, this is an absolutely damaging, a terrible project, not to speak about the future indebtedness of the country for these hundreds of millions of dollars, and the siphoning off of the scarce resources of the economy from much more important activities like schools, like hospitals, and so on. And yet, we all rejected this project. None of the donors was willing to have their name connected with it, and it was the first project to be implemented. The good projects, which we as donor community would take under our wings, they took years. We had to do many studies, and very often they didn't succeed. But these bad projects, which were absolutely damaging for the economy, for many generations, for the environment, for thousands of families who had to be resettled, they were suddenly put together by consortia of banks, of supplier agencies, of insurance agencies like in Germany, Hermes, and so on. And they came back very, very quickly, driven by an unholy alliance between the powerful elites in the countries there and the suppliers from the north. Now, these suppliers were our big companies. They were the actors of this global market, which I mentioned in the beginning. They were the Siemenses of this world.
Tell me what you think about the clip, all right? It's not funny, I know, I shouldn't be laughing. Don't forget to like and to share and to subscribe, and tell me what you think. I have been affected, and I believe that every African person has been affected by corruption. Every person has been affected by corruption. Not all of them. Not the kings and the politicians' kids, not those. Not the leaders, not them. I'm talking about the people there. The real people, not those ones. Right. Bye-bye.